RVer Frank here with Kathee and Coco. We are traveling out in these parts on our way to Bishop, California. This is Lone Pine Part 2, continuing north on this journey up the old El Camino Sierra highway. Having grown up in the Owens River Valley, I thought I would make videos along the way that highlight the diverse history of the area and pioneer stories of how it was back in the day to create a visual time capsule. So come along, join us, and enjoy the ride. Early Lone Pine was more lively and colorful than other valley towns. The mines of Cerro Gordo, Panamint, and Darwin brought Lone Pine a floating population of many nationalities, notably miners from Wales, Cornwall, and Mexico. Back in the 1920s, even then, Hollywood was looking for movie locations where there was a variety of scenery. And when they came on location, they needed lodging. Businessman Walter Dow bought a ranch in Lone Pine in 1918. He was very generous with his time and money and helped promote the Owens Valley. Walter could see ahead and knew what it could mean to the valley to have the big movie business, so he built the Dow Motel. The front porch of the hotel gave a magnificent view of the Sierra with Mount Whitney the central attraction. Originally, the hotel had 55 rooms and one apartment for the manager. When the golden days of movies began to die down, television and tourism came in. Here again, film companies found housing at the Dow Hotel. In 1957, Dow sold the hotel and the new owners built the first motel section adjacent to the hotel where the Santa Rosa Catholic Church used to be located, naming the new addition the Dow Villa Motel. In 1959, a second section of the motel was added and a third in 1963. All three of the original motel sections have had major reconstruction and beautification. The Dow Hotel still bears that refined, graceful air of its Hollywood heyday. It is constantly being restored to its original charm. The Dow hosted countless producers, directors, and stars. These are just a few who frequently stayed at the Dow. By building the Dow Hotel, there was no doubt that Walter Dow was responsible for much of the prosperity that came to Lone Pine and the Owens Valley. Walter got frustrated with going to Bishop for lumber, so he started the Lone Pine Lumber and Supply Company on the east side of 395. Then sometime later moved the company west across 395 in a new building, and since has been demolished with a McDonald's which stands there today. Walter also started the Square Deal Super Service Station. Check out that tow truck and the two wrecked cars. Looks like the station received a few facelifts over the years to what it is today. Walter built the Winneduma Hotel in Independence and the Glacier Lodge near Big Pine. Over a period of some 40 years in the commercial photograph business, the late Burton Frasher Sr. accumulated over 60,000 negatives, most of them from his postcard business, and millions of his postcards were produced and sold. I came across this Dow Hotel postcard, post-stamped October 29, 1941, addressed to the city of Inglewood, to a house which still stands today much like it was back in the day. I will tell you a story about a French family who built the first store on the west side of Main Street in Pioneer, Lone Pine. Charles Mason had become intrigued by the reports of the Cerro Gordo mining area, and when he and his family reached Lone Pine on their way to Southern California, they stopped and bought property. The deed for the property was registered on December 18, 1869. Charles and Madeline Mason's general merchandise store, which included living quarters for their 10 children, was built out of Adobe brick, as were the more than 50 buildings in Lone Pine at the time. Things had continued well for the family during the winter of 1871 and the spring of 1872, but something was wrong with one of daughter Alice's eyes, and Charles realized he would need to take her by wagon to a doctor for attention for the ailment. Elodie Mason, a granddaughter, tells the family story of that time. Loading the wagon with what they would need for the journey, they set out early one morning. When they got out of sight of Lone Pine, Alice got homesick. She was a home-loving little girl and missed her mother. She started to cry. She wanted to go home. She cried nearly all the way to Mojave. After several days of tears, Mason turned the wagon around and brought her home. 3 weeks later, on March 26, 1872, at 2:30 a.m., Alice was killed in an earthquake of 1872. Marie, her sister, was sleeping on the outside of the bed next to the adobe wall, and Alice was on the inside. When the wall collapsed in the shaking, she was smothered. The family had all rushed outside in their night clothes, and when Madeline Mason started to count the children, she realized Alice was missing. Alice is buried in the communal grave of 16 in the earthquake cemetery on Harvey Hill. From this tragedy, a little-known attraction in Lone Pine is the old adobe wall that survived the earthquake, and since then has won fame as Lone Pine's only example of pre-earthquake adobe architecture. Today, a chunk of that wall sits in the alley behind a local shop. The old adobe wall is actually a piece of a wall from the old Mason General Store, where this real-life drama earned the wall its spot in history. It is 148 inches long and 80 inches high, made of adobe brick and rubble held together with mortar. The bottom layer consists of 3 feet of heavy stone. To the untrained eye, it is more baffling than awe-inspiring. A buff-colored hulk locked behind a chain-link fence, but generations of townfolk have ensured its preservation, passing down the responsibility as if it were a family heirloom. The wall is an example of grassroots preservation, of local people deciding what matters, what to save, and what to let fade away. The Masons rebuilt on the site, but never tore down the section of wall left behind after the disaster. No other adobe structures would be built again in Lone Pine. The Mason family held on to the new building and the wall remnant for decades before finally selling the property to a private buyer. On June 17, 2000, the wall was officially dedicated by the local chapter of E. Clampus Vitus, a California fraternal order with a tongue-in-cheek name, it's really not Latin, and roots that extend to the Gold Rush era. On the sidewalk near the entrance of the current business, an impressive plaque explains the wall's past. Since 2002, the State Office of Historic Preservation has listed the property as a State Point of Historical Interest, the lowest designation on the scale of recognition, well below historic monument status. That happens often when local residents nominate a site. Over the years, the building and businesses have changed ownership, but still operate in the same structure the Masons built after the earthquake. 2 rooms have been added. Each new shop owner bids farewell to their customers and is happy to have people visit their shop and the wall. Let's take a drive down Lone Pine Main Street and Memory Lane. The 1872 earthquake introduced the area of wood frame buildings. It also changed the landscape, as mentioned earlier, creating Lake Diaz and causing the western side of Owens Lake, now dry, to drop 15 feet. Modern estimates put the 1872 quake's magnitude as high as 8.0. The most devastating effects of this earthquake occurred here in Lone Pine, where 52 of 59 houses, mostly constructed of adobe or stone, were destroyed and 27 people were killed. A few fatalities also were reported in other parts of Owens Valley. One report states the main buildings were thrown down in almost every town in Inyo County. Faulting occurred on the Owens Valley Fault along a line of a few kilometers east of the Sierra Nevada escarpment. The faulting near Lone Pine involved both dip, slip, and right lateral components of movement. The largest horizontal displacement of 7 meters was measured on the fault scarps west of Lone Pine. North of Lone Pine on the left is the mass gravesite for the victims of the 1872 earthquake that destroyed the town and surrounding area. You can see the fault scarp to the west of Lone Pine, a short walk from Whitney Portal Road. Here is located the original plaque and memorial for the 1872 earthquake. Disaster in 1872. On the date of March 26, 1872, an earthquake of major proportions shook Owens Valley and nearly destroyed the town of Lone Pine. 27 persons were killed. In addition to single burials, 16 of the victims were interred in a common grave enclosed by this fence. There is another, more recent memorial plaque placed here in 1988, which reads as follows: March 26, 1988. 116 years ago, this date, an 8.3 earthquake hit Lone Pine. 27 people died. 16 are buried at this site in a common grave. Alice Mason, age 11, family still resides in Independence. Manuel Yabasita, Antonio Montoya, Maria Tarazona, and her 3 children. The rest of French, Irish, Chilean, Mexican, and Native American ancestry are known but to God. March 26, 1872. So for those of you that made it to the end of this video, we want to thank you for watching and hope you found it interesting. Because there is so much more to tell about Lone Pine, we are going to move on for now and stop back here on future trips to this area. So on we go to Bishop, with more interesting places and stories ahead to share along the way. So travel safe, and we will see you soon.